friends, Heidi here from Rain Country. God is good all the time. And today we're going to make graham crackers. And I will be making these ones gluten-free. However, you can make them however you want. So if you want a true graham cracker, you may want to go get yourself some graham flour, which is pretty easy to find. I know that our store carries the Bob's Red Mill graham flour, but I'm going to be using some different flours in mine today to keep them gluten-free. Now, I am not gluten-free, but I do like experimenting with different gluten-free recipes because when Mr. Rain and I first went off our thyroid medications, we were really trying to cut back on gluten just to let our bodies heal and get ourselves to a point where, you know, our thyroids were functioning really good. And so it's a good idea if you're going off your thyroid medication and you're trying to go more natural to at least for a time go gluten-free. That will really help your body kind of give it a jump start in doing what it was created to do as far as your thyroid goes. And then of course there's a lot of people out there with celiacs and other kinds of things like that, and so are, you know, real strong gluten sensitivities. So I do like to offer different options for people who are looking for something else. So gluten-free it is today. Now the total flour you're going to need, whether you're using all graham flour or a mix of flours or a mix of gluten-free flours, is 3 cups. So what I have here is some quinoa flour, and this I milled up in my Country Living grain mill just a little bit ago using these quinoa grains right here, these seeds, and I will link to the quinoa I get below. And I will be using 2 cups of rice flour. And this is just plain white rice flour. Now notice I'm mixing this in kind of a smallish bowl. You don't have to start with this small of a bowl, but there's a reason why this is in this particular bowl. Now the other thing you're going to need is about a ½ teaspoon of baking soda, and then a teaspoon of baking powder. So that's actually, let me look here. That's about a teaspoon right there. I really need to get myself a new wire whisk because my other one broke, my big one. But I usually like using a big fork for mixing stuff like this anyway. Okay, so we're going to set that aside. And now I'm grabbing a bigger bowl and we're going to move on to our other ingredients. So what I have here is a 1/3 cup of the raw blackberry honey that I'm always talking about. That is so delicious, and I always like to link it below. This is a Glory Bees honey. So I'm going to put that in there. Get all that in there. And the reason my honey always looks like this is because I have a big bucket of it, and so I just always go scoop it out and then put it on a plate. I do usually keep a little jar of it handy, but most of the time I just go scoop it out of the big bucket back in the pantry. Now the next thing I'm going to use is a ½ cup of coconut sugar. So 1/3 cup of honey and 1/2 cup of coconut sugar. Now if you're trying to go vegan and one of the things that you like to leave out is honey, honey's kind of debatable to some vegans because it is an animal product. Then you could probably find either, I haven't tried it this way, but you could consider, you know, just using all coconut sugar or some cane sugar, or maybe using like some other type of good organic syrup that is plant-based. But we're going to do honey because we're not vegans here. All right, the next thing we need is a ½ cup of butter, and I'm just going to eyeball this. Now, if you're doing this vegan, I suggest either a ½ cup of coconut oil or even a ½ cup of the organic Tropical Traditions is the brand name I highly recommend because you got to see how it's made, but palm shortening. You want to look for something that is sustainably harvested because that can get real tricky. And so I'm going to cream these together. Oh, and then one more thing is your teaspoon of vanilla. Pour a little bit of vanilla in there. Or if your coffee or chocolate extract is ready from my last video, I'll put that right up here, or from that video I was talking about there, you could try one of those, or any of those for that matter. Whatever flavor, maybe even a peppermint one, that might sound good. Just depends on what you're looking for in a graham cracker. You may just want to keep it plain flavored. Okay, so you just got those creamed together nicely. And then you'll see I have some cacao sitting here. I'll get to that in a minute. The first thing I want to do then is mix all the dry ingredients in with the creamed butter and sugars and vanilla. Yeah, I really recommend if you're going to replace the honey that you use some kind of syrup. Maple syrup, there's another option. You could use maple syrup. Because you're going to need it to have a certain quality to it, and if you try to replace it all with dried sugar, you're going to kind of lose that particular quality. Now I suggest kneading it together. I'm sitting there trying to figure out why this is so dry, and I realized I left out an ingredient. You need some milk. Now today I'll be using my homemade pecan and cashew milk. It's a blend. I tried doing that for making the milk and the cheese, and now I'm deciding that is my favorite, the pecan and cashews together. But the pecan by itself is just wonderful as well. And what you need is a half cup. Now typically you're going to mix this in with the butter and sugar first, but since I screwed up and forgot the milk, we're just going to add it in right here. So 1/2 cup, and again I'm using the pecan and cashew milk, which again, if you're doing it vegan, this is a good choice. Or I recommend a good whole raw milk if you can get it. Okay, this is starting to pull together the way it should. Now, I did mean to start this video off stating that this can be a 2-day process depending on how early you start it. So I'm going to finish this up tomorrow. Because I just don't have time to come back to this later today. Because once you get your dough all put together, you're going to want to chill it for at least, I would say 8 hours or overnight. So I'm just going to chill it until tomorrow and then finish this out then. However, let's finish this dough first because I want to show you some options. So obviously you're going to want to get to a point where you're kind of kneading it together. And if it still feels too dry that it's not holding together, you can always add a little bit more milk as you go. Okay, this is looking pretty good. Now what I'm going to do, and the reason I have 2 more bowls here, is I'm going to be dividing the dough in half. I'm going to put 1/2 in this bowl and 1/2 in this bowl. And this one I want to break up. And I'm going to go ahead and add some cacao to this, or cocoa. A good organic cocoa. I will link to the one I use below. Now if you're new and you don't know, the difference between cacao and cocoa is that cocoa's already been baked or heated to a point where it's no longer raw. That's the only difference. So if you're making a chocolate graham cracker and you want to do the whole batch this way, you're going to use anywhere from a 1/2 cup to 3/4 cup of your cocoa or your cacao. And so it's just a matter of taste. Now since I'm dividing the dough in half, I'll be using, I'm going to say maybe a little less than a 1/2 cup. Because I want a good strong chocolate flavor to it. So a little bit more there. And then I'm going to work that in. Now, if you're doing this, if you're going to do the whole batch this way, then I recommend adding the cocoa to the dry ingredients first. That's just going to be a little bit easier. But because I wanted to do this separately and have both kinds of graham crackers, that's why I'm doing it this way. I'm just going to knead it in there. And again, if it ends up being a little dry, you know, because obviously this is going to be drier now that I'm adding all that cocoa in there, then all you got to do is you can put it back in your bowl and add a little bit more of your milk to it to make it easy. You just want to make sure it's going to stick together. It's got to be a dough, kind of it's similar to pie crust in how it pulls together. Okay, so now it's all mixed together, and see how that looks? It's a nice solid lump of dough there, and I'm going to put it back in my bowl. Now if I was thinking, I would have used my glass lot containers instead. However, here's a good chance for me to show how I use my waxed fabrics. Right here I've got some fabric this was some waxed fabric that, actually this one I can tell is one I just redid, and I talked about it in one of my more recent this and that videos. But if you're wanting to know how I do mine, you can go ahead and find that video right up here. That one's probably about 1.5 years old, that video. So I don't have as bright a lighting there as we do now. But anyway, I just put my waxed fabric over that and just kind of fold it around there. And this one, because it was just done, is nice and firm. So I'm going to actually stack those so they don't take up as much room in the fridge. This one here still needs to be redone again. It's not holding as well. However, one can also take a rubber band or something and put it around there if you got a big enough rubber band, or tie. You can also make these with ties or elastic around them, and I've thought about it, but I've also decided that would be just a little bit too much of a hassle when it came to the waxing and all that. But it can be done. You know, it's a matter of choice. So anyway, now these are ready to go in the fridge, and so I'm just going to go ahead and leave them in there all the rest of today and tonight, because I got to get to a whole bunch of other stuff today, and I will come back tomorrow and finish this process so that you can see what we do next. All right, well, it's the next day, and I'm ready to start rolling out my graham cracker dough. So let's get to it. So here are the 2 bowls I just took out of the fridge, and the best thing to do is to cut this into 4 parts and then just work with 1 part at a time. Now this is pretty hard, so I like to use my spatula for cutting with, and I'm going to cut a half off of each one if I can get it out of the bowl. And I'm going to try, this is the other thing I was going to say, I'm going to try rolling these out directly on the cookie sheet and see if that works like I did the crackers, that one batch of crackers. And that's why I had Mr. Rain make me a couple of short, just simple rolling pins so I could do this right in my cookie sheets and not have to transfer them over. Now I tried it with my one crackers that I made, the whole grain and seed ones, and you can find a video on that one right here. And for whatever reason, it was just a little more complicated doing those that way, but I have a feeling the graham crackers will work well in here. The gluten-free crackers I did off of Wanda's recipe did good rolling it in here, and then using the waxed fabric as a cover so it doesn't, you know, I don't even have to use flour when I do it that way. And I might try that. I might try that with this. So I'm not sure, but I'm going to see if half of this will fit. And this is very cold. This is going to be very hard to roll out. So I'm going to try pressing it first. I do think rolling it in the pan is going to be the best bet though, rather than trying to transfer it. So I'm just kind of thinking chilling it for that long really wasn't that necessary. And like I said, it's been years since I made these, so I don't really remember chilling it, but that's what my recipe says. So, and I don't remember where I got the initial recipe, or otherwise I would share it, because I do try to be good about giving people credit where credit is due. Because I usually, what I do is I go look for recipes, I find what I can, and then I compare recipes, and then I make changes as I feel is necessary to suit me and what I'm looking for and my taste. So I'm deciding that this is just a little too hard and it's wanting to kind of fall apart. So I'm going to let this get up to room temperature a little bit, and then I'm going to come back and work with it some more. Alright, so I'm back. I let it warm up. In fact, I cheated and stuck it on the wood stove and let it warm up a little bit more. So here's the thing. Just skip the whole step of chilling the dough. Again, it's been a few years since I made it last, and I don't remember what it was like rolling it out and if I even bothered chilling it. But I figured I better follow my recipe. So I'm going to actually take that part out of my recipe and scratch that idea, because it's just a little too hard to roll out. And so a little bit of flour and the wax fabric seem to really be doing the trick of getting this rolled out. So what I'm going to do is I'm going to finish this, and then I'll show you what I do once I get these all rolled out the way I want them. Alright, so I have my dough all rolled out, and it works really good doing it in the cookie sheet with the graham cracker dough. And the nice thing about doing it right in your cookie sheet or baking dish, whatever you call it, is that you have the edges to go by, and you can, make it nice and square. And then I just use the spatula or my hand to kind of push the edges up to just make it nice and square. If you're wanting it, if it really matters what they look like. And then you can cut them whatever shape size you want. I'm just going to use my spatula and go right down the center of each one and then cut each of those into thirds this way. So I should end up with 6 crackers out of each rectangle here. And then if you want to make it even look more like the ones in the package, you can add even just a little indentation like this. Obviously these aren't perfect as far as exact shape size. I just eyeball everything. Now I'll just give it a point where it can at least look like the ones in the package, or even a place where you might make it easier to break once they're baked. And then just take your fork and poke a few holes like that. Kind of need those vent holes so they're there for more than just looks. And another option you can do is, like with the plain ones, or even the chocolate ones if you wish, is you can sprinkle a little cinnamon sugar on top, or you can take these plain ones and mix your cinnamon in with the batter or with the dough before you press it out. So whatever sounds good to you. And I'm sure there's many other options you can use or you could go with. Alright, so now let's show you what these look like this. Now I'm going to put them in my oven that has been preheated to 350, and then I'll be baking them right about the center of the oven is where I like to put the rack for 13 to 15 minutes. So make sure, especially if your oven is kind of runs a little on the hotter side like mine does, to check them at about 12 or 13 minutes to see how they're doing, and then go from there. So I'm going to get these baked up and I'll be back when they're all done. Well, my crackers are all done and they turned out pretty good. And one thing I forgot to say is that if you're going to put a little bit of sugar on it for looks, like I did this one right here and then this one right here, get it in the light so you can see it better, make sure you do that before you stick it in the oven. I just did a couple so you can see what they look like that, but if you don't want to add any extra sugar, then don't bother with it. Now, one thing I can say about this time trying it with the quinoa in there, I still like them, but I would say if you're going gluten-free, use something that doesn't have as strong as the flavor. Like I would say go just all rice flour, which was what I did when I made these before. Or if you're looking for a real traditional graham cracker flavor, then you're going to want to use your graham flour, and that's going to give you your real good graham cracker flavor. But these are quite good as they are, and I do have a recipe for homemade marshmallows, and I will get to that in a future video. So now you can have your chocolate, your graham crackers, and your marshmallows. Hopefully I'll get that done before summer. Alright, well I hope you enjoyed this video and that you learned something new. Thanks for watching, take care, and God bless.